How are you? Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now? I am very well. How are you today?
Wonderful, wonderful. Also, we have a great guest.
We do. We have Miss Carmen Studer. You know, we're on this series of narcissism, and so we actually have someone here that's going to talk us through how to heal past the effects and the pain of narcissism.
All right, and of course, joining us on the KHVN Live line, we have Dr. Renee Hornbuckle. And Dr. Renee, how you doing?
How are you doing?
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for checking in with us and helping us continue to talk about this narcissism. Ooh, that's a tight.
Something to talk about.
Yes, it's a tight subject, but you guys kind of broke it open last week, and we really defined it and really kind of started to really help people understand, because I think the biggest misconception was people misunderstood, a sense of arrogance for narcissism, and you got to really know the definition to understand what you're dealing with.
Yes, you actually really do. And I'll let Dr. Renee start us off, because she gave us some really great pointers and tips last week to understand the personality traits. And, we said we would kind of go back through those again. So, Dr. Renee, if you will start us off with that, and then we'll go into how to heal.
Well, absolutely. And I tell you what, I apologize, man. I got stuck in traffic today, so I didn't even get there. I'm sitting literally on the freeway. So you know the devil doesn't want us to talk about this subject.
That's right.
Right.
But the thing of it is that we've got to really understand this personality disorder. It is a disorder of a personality, someone who is so grand in their thoughts that they think that their way is absolutely the only way. They're people that will not take responsibility for their own actions. They will continually blame everybody else for any deficiencies or inadequacies in their life. And it's like an extreme shifting of blame and not taking responsibility, if you will. Because I think last week some people were like, well, aren't some people like that anyway? Well, yeah, I think sometimes we all can be that way. But when you find a person that absolutely never, ever takes responsibility for any of their negative actions, a person who will not apologize for anything that they do, a person who absolutely twists everything to fall in their favor, we need to start opening up our eyes and being absolutely aware that this is a disorder. It is not normal behavior, and it can be extremely, extremely damaging.
Right.
Yes.
That's good.
Yeah, they do, and they do a lot of taking advantage of others, and they believe that they are just so superior, and they're unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings or needs of anybody whatsoever. Their achievements are so much greater, and it's always about me, me, me. It's always building themselves up and not building others up. And we talked about this last week, which was really important, is they don't even apologize. They justify their actions. They come back and say, okay, well, this is why I did what I did. Never with the apology. So it's always making you feel like you're the blame. You're the person that is to be shamed. You're the person that has the problem. You're the person with the challenges or issues. And it deals a lot with tearing down your self-esteem so that you stay in a manipulative position to always be underneath their thumb, to do what they want, when they want, how they want. And it really truly deals with a lot with control as well. And
Manipulation and the extreme exaggeration of any situation in their life. These are the people that will say, you know what, I walk down the street, but they'll be like, well, I walked down the street and there was a whole band that was with me, and, I had cheerleaders, and so they really exaggerate the truth, even when it's not necessary.
Absolutely, absolutely. And wouldn't you say that as well, Carmen, that you've experienced that? As we're getting ready to kind of move into the healing portion of it, wouldn't you say that that's a lot what you experienced as well?
There's so many things that happen. It's triangulation and gaslighting and all of these really incredible terms that basically are the same thing as trying to push you off center. And the reason they want to push you off center is because they want to control you. And when you have somebody that's pushed off center, they're no longer standing on the faith that's necessary to heal. You have to have that strong faith. And so they know that if they keep having, if you're constantly questioning, did I do that? Did I did I say that? And that's the thing about emotional abuse is there is no bruise. It's all in your head and it's invisible. And what I help people do is make the invisible visible.
And Dr. Hornbuckle, the book that we talked about last week as well too is The Power of Healthy Self-Esteem, isn't it? Your book that's one that I think it's one that's been out for a while, hasn't it?
It's been out for a while, but I actually just reintroduced it, and a lot of it came from what I experienced by being in a relationship with a narcissist. I did not even realize, and I think Carmen will concur with this, is that when you are in a relationship with this type of person, they will strip your personal identity away to the point where they do have absolute control over you, and that is really their goal. And so for someone that may be struggling and saying, well, you know what, I can't do anything right in a relationship, and it just seems like everything is always my fault, I think that we have to begin to open up our eyes of understanding to really look to see if we're in a healthy relationship, because it could be that we are in a relationship with someone that has a narcissistic personality, that is an extremist in their thoughts and in their views, and as a result of that, that relationship will never be healthy. And so, you know, I love researching, and I happen to look. A friend of mine introduced a book entitled 7 Men You Should Never Marry. And in that book, he writes about the narcissist, and it actually ends up being one of the longest books. But from a male perspective, I thought it was so interesting because he talks about how a lot of times we overlook the narcissist. There's no one size fits all. They can be people with money, people without money, but sometimes they're extremely difficult to identify. They could be athletes, executives, government officials, professors, celebrities, or entertainers who engage in behaviors that put them out front. So we're not able to readily identify that personality when we see it. But when you begin to look at some of the things that they do, they blame everybody. They're very, very selfish. Everything is always about them. They're very insensitive. They speak to you in a demeaning way. And it doesn't even register with them how demeaning they are. I think Carmen was speaking about the emotional abuse. They don't even recognize or take responsibility for the fact that they may be tearing you apart. So ultimately, you end up with no identity and with a very poor esteem of self when you're in these kind of relationships.
Well, let's move into the healing. How can we begin the healing process?
Well, I think the first thing that I was saying earlier is that you have to work through your own self-esteem issues. I mean, you know, because I myself, you know, we talked about that last week, was in a relationship with a narcissist as well. And let's be clear, because there was this question last week, a narcissist is not only a male. There are many females out there that exuberate this personality disorder as well. But you have to be able to work through your own self-esteem issues. And truth be told, that is not an overnight process. That does take some time. And that healing out of that relationship is almost you have to purge and cleanse and get all of the debris out from the relationship, because you really truly can't even function mentally healthy, because that abuse is not something that Carmen talked about that you can see.
Well, for me, I spent 4.5 years studying what was wrong with the narcissist, and I think that a lot of women who have been in that situation make that same mistake, and then they get involved with finding out more about it and joining clubs and doing different things. And what I realized was that the highest level of a codependent is a narcissist. We always think that they're the one in control and we have a codependency, but what it really is their codependency is even higher than ours. They're so codependent that they can't do a thing without you. And so if you begin studying that rather than the narcissism, you can find yourself beginning that healing process.
And so what was your steps?
So I really, it's so difficult to encapsulate this in a few minutes. So I boiled it down into 2 things that I think would be really simple for people to understand. 1, ask and you shall receive. You have God's faith. We We are both transmitters and receivers. When we ask, we're transmitting. When we receive, we're receiving. And I think what happens is the narcissist pulls off that ask part, and they take all of it, and then you receive all of the crud. And so I really like for people to start, especially the people who have been victims, to understand you lost your focus. You lost your ability to ask. What you're asking for is for them to be happy. And so, God's going, okay, I'm trying to make him happy. I'm giving you what you asked for. And they're asking for you to keep doing all of their dirt work, And so you have to remember that anything you ask for, you will get. So what I teach people to do is start reaching for better feelings, to go back to being a kid and knowing that spirit within you, that you know when you're right. And you keep chasing a better feeling and a better feeling and a better feeling. Go out in nature, play, do things that make you happy, and trust your inner guidance. That spirit, the reason it's grieving is because you are so far away from God's intended plan for you.
And on the spirit of grief, or talking about grief, that is one thing that you have to do, is you have to cut it off, and you have to grieve and move on. That is hard, because that they will keep sucking you back in, and you will keep back and forth. It will be a consistent back and forth, and right when you're thinking I'm good, everything's fine, and then you get sucked right back in, and then there goes the words and the behavior, and it's literally a tearing and a breaking down. And I am a firm believer to seek help. Get it wherever you need. I believe in counseling. I believe in Christian counseling. And I think Dr. Renee would agree as well, is that, I'm a firm believer in getting past the pain, healing through it, talking through it, sorting through it, dealing with the emotions. I was really good at sweeping everything underneath the rug. And so if I was, and that didn't help. And then, it eventually exploded in my whole face. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. I am not dealing with what is happening in my life. And when I began to deal with it, little by little, it's like that onion layer. You start breaking those, pulling back the stench, the everything, and then getting to that, getting to the core of what it is, and healing, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. I agree with you. I think that we can often spiritually bypass, and you cannot do that. You have to be able to look at where you are, but there's a difference between ignoring something and going inside and being happy and reaching for more and more of what you deserve. Heaven on earth.
Absolutely. I think that's really good. That's really good.
Wow, that's powerful.
That is powerful. And you tend to put yourself, it is that victim, and then you have to accept the fact, which I had to do, is that I had become a victim. I had started living a victim mentality, and it was eating me alive every day. Didn't even understand what was happening to my body physically, because I had just taken a place of victimization like Dr. Renee said earlier, I'd never felt pretty enough, smart enough, good enough. Nothing about anything I did was enough, until I started cutting the layers and cutting the time and the energy, and then it had been that healing just started coming in bit by bit. And again, like we talked about, this is not just a male-female relationship as well. This could be anything. It could be a father-daughter relationship, or son-mother relationship. It could be a parent. It could be a co-worker. It could be a boss. It could be a friend. It could be any of those types of relationships. So we can't just put it in just a male-female relationship. What do you call it? A romantic relationship. You have to look at all forms and understand that we all should be moving forward and moving towards the place of where we can be exactly where you said it best, heaven on earth, and be where God has called us to be. But it is a process, and it is not overnight. So that is one thing too. Be patient through the process, and understanding that God's got all power. We know that, and He can heal us through anything and everything. But it is a process, wouldn't you say?
May I say that there are not more beautiful people than the people who are victims. It's a very odd turn of events. It's that gorgeous spirit that gets blindsided because they believe that the other people are just like them. What they're forgetting is that the type of person who would be attracted to that needs that. And so what happens is through that, I've met some of the most amazing women, and I know there's people listening right now, women and men, who have been in that situation. I know you know in your bones when you're right, and all I have to say is listen. When you have that feeling and you know you're right, trust it.
I do agree.
That's really important that you do that, because one thing about narcissists is that they are able to really, pull the wool over even those that feel they have the most excellent judge of character, because they're so masterful at what they do. And so somebody probably listening and saying, well, I allowed myself to get into this situation. Well, I think most of us allowed ourselves to get into it because we really did not open up our eyes to really the signals and the warnings and the indicators that really were there, because it is very difficult to discern. It's challenging to discern the character of a narcissist. But the best way for you to be armed is to get knowledge, and that's what we're sharing. You've got to get the knowledge, get the insight, because if you're in a relationship, it could be male or female, female or female, whatever the case may be, when a person has literally torn you down at their own expense to get their agenda ahead about them at all times, it really does a number on you personally. And so people from all walks of life are affected by this type of personality, and so you've got to open up your eyes of understanding, you've got to be equipped with knowledge, and then you ultimately have to realize this is a process that you have to walk through to healing, because in order for you to really reclaim yourself and really free yourself from the manipulation, the intimidation, the frustration, the aggravation, you're going to have to put some work into it to get to that place. And cutting it off is often the most difficult place to start with this kind of person, because the moment you try to leave this kind of person, again, they're going to start manipulating and starting making you feel like it's your fault that the relationship has ended up as it is. So you've got to start with getting the knowledge and being aware of as you all were speaking about, the things that just don't feel right. If it doesn't feel right, and my mama used to say this, if it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. So you have to rely on that intuition of that Holy Ghost to really, to help you. And there's always, according to the Word of God, a way to always, really judge this. You test the spirit by the spirit. And you
I agree.
look to see what kind of fruit is hanging on somebody's tree. And somebody, is always slinging, their fruit at you. Hello, wake up. It's an indicator, okay, that it's all about them, and it's always going to be about them.
Did you want to say something, Carmen, before you?
One of the things I think, I'm just speaking about the healing piece, is you can learn a lot from a narcissist. They're still God's children, and they have good qualities. And what I would say is to learn that focus and to learn how to have self-interest, but not selfishness. There's a difference in the harmonious way in which it's delivered. And I think that a lot of people who are of the spirit that does at its core match with that type of person really needs to focus on learning how to increase their self-interest, to spend time alone, and to really get to know who they are.
I do. So I would say, Carmina, healing through your own self-esteem issues, grieve and move on, cut the contact, but make sure that you're getting help along the process so that you can adequately heal.
Well, we're going to definitely revisit that conversation. And Dr. Renee, how can they connect with you online?
They can find me on ReneeHornbuckle.com and all social media under Renee Hornbuckle.
All right. Cheryl, how can they connect with you online?
They can connect with me you can always email me at info@selfesteemelevated.org, and our website is selfesteemelevated.org. You can always find me on Facebook at SEEC Beautiful You. See Beautiful You.
All right, Carmen, how can they connect with you?
Probably social media would be the best. It's all under my name, Carmen Studer, like student, only ER at the end.
Perfect. Well, ladies, thank you so much for this conversation. And
Thank
one
you.
We're definitely going to revisit. Y'all keep it here. 797.
These days, you gotta have a side hustle. And I'm not talking about 9 to 5. I'm talking about driving.
Huh?
I kept trying to turn it down because all you hear was Pastor Renee's window. I was like,
Oh.
I couldn't hear it.
I couldn't hear it at all.
Yeah.
oh, it was killing me in the headphones.